Asa, a Welsh monk, wrote "The Life of King Alfred", a biography of the great King of Wessex, to whose court he had been called, and to whom Asa would become so well acquainted. Through Asa's work, we come to know Alfred the Great so well as though he was somebody we were reading about in a newspaper or in an online article. Alfred's tale isn't always a happy one, as Asa makes clear. Wars against foreign invaders that we know as the Vikings dominate Alfred's story, and Alfred's health, for most of his life, failed him. His chronic pains caused him much dread, even during the short periods where he was relatively pain free. But whilst Alfred was full of dread from potential invasions in his kingdom and from the ever present threat of his health worsening, we also come to see him as a warm man and who desired the prosperity of not only himself but all his subjects, as long as they behaved themselves, of course. Asa writes, "Nor was it in vain that they all gained the friendship of the king, for those who desired to augment their worldly power obtained power, those who desired money gained money, those who desired his friendship acquired his friendship." With Alfred, generosity didn't just manifest itself in material ways. Since virtually the earliest days of his childhood, Alfred had loved to learn. Poetry was read to him as a young boy, as, somewhat oddly, and with which Asa rebukes Alfred's parents, Alfred didn't learn to read until later in life. That love of learning, a welcome distraction from his various troubles, would stay with Alfred all his life, and it is a testament to his character that the king was determined that he should produce a kingdom where most, if not all his subjects, were at least reasonably well educated. Asa wrote of the education of Alfred's youngest son. Athelweard, the youngest, by the divine counsel and by the admirable foresight of the king, was entrusted to the schools of literary training, where, with the children of almost all the nobility of the country, and many also who were not noble, he was under the diligent care of the teachers. Education, Alfred felt, was not just for the rich, and he hoped that Wessex would benefit from a well trained populace. Alfred would keep a watchful eye on his children's upbringing, marrying off his eldest child, Athelfled, to Athelred of Mercia. Naturally, a young girl being married perhaps before she was ready sounds unpleasant enough, but Alfred had picked, in Athelred, a suitable husband for Athelfled. Athelred would treat his wife with due care and respect throughout their marriage, and well might he. Athelfled would prove herself to be an exceptional woman throughout her life, abilities that had been carefully nurtured by Alfred, and Athelfled would make a lasting impact on English history. Two of Alfred's other children, Edward, his eventual successor, and Athelraith, would be kept at the royal court, where they received great attention from their tutors and nurses. Nay, they continue to this day, with much love from everyone, to show humbleness, affability, and gentleness towards all, both natives and foreigners, whilst remaining in complete subjection to their father. Asa refers to Edward and Athelrith as being in complete subjection to Alfred, but in all likelihood it was more likely a case of Alfred instilling in his children, particularly Edward, the importance of loyalty. Loyalty in the years after Alfred's death would play a big part in the evolution of Wessex into becoming a large kingdom that we now call England. Edward and Athelfled would fight the Viking threat with mutual sibling respect, whilst further down the line, Athelstan, Alfred's grandson and Edward's son, would be served manfully by his half brother, Edmund, at the crucial Battle of Brunanburh in 937. England was gradually built during the years 878 to 937, and it owed much to the family unity that Alfred had established amongst his family and heirs. Alfred was certainly one of the most forward thinking men of the age. Even with his various preoccupations, Alfred still managed to find time to enjoy himself out in the hunt. Asa also describes how Alfred designed and built magnificent new houses, which was certainly of an interest to Alfred, but also may have served another purpose. Wessex, as well as the other English kingdoms, had become well acquainted with the destruction of the Viking raids, but here was Alfred building majestic new palaces in what could be seen as an almost taunting fashion. In bygone days, these new buildings would have been a very obvious target for the raiders, but Alfred was telling his enemies and his people that he feared no new fresh attacks, and instead of seeing his kingdom set ablaze, Alfred would not only shield Wessex from harm, but ensure that it prospered. Alfred was a man, of course, devoted to religion, and he must have been delighted when Pope Marinus I sent him a piece of the supposed true cross in recognition of his efforts against the pagan raiders. Alfred not only attended Mass daily, but was almost obsessive with his prayers, although he must surely have been distracted from his devotion from time to time. As a man, Alfred was described as being affable and agreeable, traits that would also be found in his grandson Athelstan. Alfred's thirst for learning remained unquenchable. To Wessex he called learned men from the other kingdoms, as well as from among the Franks across the Channel. During his rare moments of leisure, Alfred got such men to read books to him, for he never suffered himself to be without one of them, so that he came to possess a knowledge of almost every book. Alfred himself translated books into Old English, so they were more easily accessible. His most famous work, however, was of course his patronage of the Anglo Saxon Chronicles, which is a remarkable piece of work that brings to life history before Alfred's time, during it, and long after his death. Alfred the Great ensured education in Wessex began to flourish. He was friendly to those who deserved it, even those who were not from his kingdom. Alfred was incredibly courageous in the battlefield and was somebody who learned from his mistakes, especially those made early in his reign. He was one of the most resilient men imaginable. The brutal nature of his illness was a terrible thing for Alfred, and that was a fact that the king couldn't keep hidden. The pains he suffered were on his mind day and night, but through his piety, his determination, and his sheer heroism, Alfred the Great saved Wessex from falling into Scandinavian hands. There has been very few men like him in the country's history. He lived in a time when facts can be a little difficult to establish, but through the Anglo Saxon Chronicles, and indeed the life of King Alfred, we see Alfred for who he was. He wasn't perfect, he could be vulnerable, but he was also the most courageous king in English history. Alfred the Great, worthy of the name.